It's a light laser and music extravaganza. Sold out around the world, hundreds of thousands don't hold back, jiggling and sweating to an orchestra playing their favourite dance bangers.
The time has come to Auckland, Sythony, galvanise.
They can't get enough. This is Synthony.
So Synthony is a breathtaking collision of electronic dance music with full live orchestra, guest vocalists and immersive visual.
Cheeky question, is it making you rich?
Well,
Kia ora, I'm Amanda Gillies, and on The Detail today, a good news business story. We're talking about Synthony, which has grown from a one-off idea in Auckland back in 2016 into a successful global money-making machine. David Higgins, the boss of Synthony, tells us how his show is now selling out around the world. And while billed as a family event, it's becoming increasingly popular with aged millennials, Gen X and boomers, females in particular, reliving their youth.
there's three elements. One element is nightclub EDM bangers with a slant to nostalgia, big global hits, Fatboy Slim, Chemical Brothers, Darude, etc., and some more modern tracks, but big global electronic bangers is one element. The second element is orchestra, classic conservative violins and cellos and, a conductor, and it's the collision of those, like a clash of civilizations. And then the third is a time-coded lighting visual laser show that makes it kind of immersive. And those are the three elements that we mash up. And, we can scale that down to like two smaller room, two lasers, and we've done as small as a 20-piece orchestra. Or we can scale that up. Symphony in the Domain, Auckland Domain, that's massive now. That had 40,000 people attend. It was the biggest one-day festival in New Zealand or Australia. We had the full Auckland Philharmonia Orchestra, and we spent millions on the production and the show.
Let's hear it. I need your help, Auckland. Synthony.
Here's the Dudes playing pub classic Bliss with the orchestra to a sold-out audience at Auckland Domain. It's electric. This is a far cry from Synthony's rather humble beginnings with 2,500 people in the Auckland Town Hall back in 2017. That's when it all began.
Make some noise for the Auckland Symphony Orchestra.
Take me right back to the beginning. How did this start?
Well, an Auckland-based couple, Erica Moore, a DJ, classically trained pianist and accountant, and her partner at the time, David Elmsley, who was an Air New Zealand pilot, actually came up with the idea to run it here. They'd seen a Pete Tong Heritage Orchestra special at Royal Albert Hall. They'd seen that on YouTube. They thought that's really cool, that clash of cultures, if you like, with conservative classical clashing with nightclub bangers. And they thought, we could do that in New Zealand. And so David, the pilot, said they set a goal to run it for less than his Air New Zealand pilot salary because they didn't want to bite off too much risk. And I think they came up with a genius name, Synthony, a merger between synthesizer, symphony like orchestra, synergy. It's such a magic one-word brand that no one had thought of globally and describes exactly what it is. And so I was taken by the name, and we went on to trademark that name in about 80 countries now. But they partnered up with George FM, and they launched it at Auckland Town Hall, and it sold out. And at that point, they were going separate ways and they contacted me. They said, we need a favour. And I said, what's that? They said, we want to get your advice on how to sell an event we've created and how much it's worth to sell. I said, okay, what's it called? They said, Synthony. I said, okay, tell me about it.
David Higgins, with a history of boxing and sports events, was immediately sold on this music and arts gig.
So he came in the office, and it was reminiscent of Dragon's Den. So basically grilled them for an hour about the event, and there was a lot I liked about it. I liked the name; it was magic. I liked the fact that the first one had sold out just on social media advertising based on the uniqueness of the concept. And I liked the feedback. The audience feedback was all that it was a magic experience. Even though they didn't spend a huge amount on production, it was a magic experience. And so I couldn't help but think, if this would work in Auckland, why wouldn't it work in Milan and Vancouver and London and Perth and Singapore? And so in my mind's eye in the first meeting, I was thinking...
So that was in the first meeting you thought that?
Yep, I thought this is a global brand like Cirque du Soleil, and we could make new show, number them, Synthony number 1, Synthony number 2, number 3. We could make new shows, we could rotate them around the world. And even if the shows aren't big, I was thinking we could do 100, 2,000 person events all over the world. So I said, yep, we're interested in buying it. And we went into due diligence and ended up buying it.
How soon after the meeting was that?
Pretty quick. It was we'd bought it within probably 2 months of the first meeting.
How much did you pay?
I actually paid them well. Like without going into too much detail, the first event didn't make a lot of money, but rather than nickel and dime, because an accountant could argue it was worth nothing because there was nothing trademarked, it hadn't made money, and it was a punt. So some accountants would say it's got no value, whereas I sort of balanced that with where I could see it going, and we ended up paying what I think was a very fair price and a bit of an earn-out.
The original owners stayed on to consult, and David took the show out of the Auckland Town Hall, first to Spark Arena and then the Domain. He also took it on the road, playing in Hamilton, Wellington and Christchurch. Venues packed out and Kiwi audiences were hooked. He then quickly crossed the ditch to Australia.
And so it was really taking off. And just before COVID hit, we had a contract with a global casino company to run a residency, which is a show every night. So when COVID hit, that kind of set us back a bit, and we actually closed our office. We had to let a few people go. But we still managed to get shows away. Like we ran our Perth show fully remotely, our first Perth show. Not one single person went to Perth. So we basically sent the orchestra sheet music to the orchestra in Perth, contracted local production, did Zoom calls to explain the technicalities of running the show, sold it through Ticketek, and it sold out at RAC Arena, and we were nervous, but it ran successfully without a single person travelling, which was fantastic. And then a few other remarkable things, like if you're promoting, say, an Ed Sheeran concert, you can't run 2 events on the same day in London and Sydney, because there's only one Ed Sheeran.
Yes.
And so that's another thing that attracts us to Synthony, is that it's brand driven rather than any one person. And we kind of made a internal rule that there's no egos and there's no cult of personality, and there's no one person ever going to be in lights. It's a brand. Like you never see Cirque du Soleil starring Trevor, the contortionist from Mongolia, because as soon as they do that, they're at Trevor's behest. And
that's who we want to see.
Yeah, and then if Trevor's not available, no one's going to go, and it kind of, you're suddenly answering to the agent and the manager of the contortionist, right? So we thought we're going to treat everyone equally. It's the Synthony as a hero, and we're going to give an opportunity to younger talent and enthusiastic talent that might not otherwise get as many opportunities. And that way we can run shows whenever we want, wherever we want. We can literally get a world map and put a pin in Vancouver and go, we want to run a show in Vancouver. Most big cities have more than one orchestra, so we'd book the local orchestra and we'd find local talent, and it gave us huge freedom to go global, if you like.
Is there anybody out there feeling something? Get it up!
I think a major breakthrough has been the YouTube channel, that we've been investing some money in filming the content live and creating nice sort of videos and putting them up on our YouTube channel. And since we started doing that, we're getting booking inquiries from around the world. And so in the last year, we performed on the start line before the start gun at Formula One Las Vegas, for example, on TV. We opened a resort in Greece called the One and Only. There's a big government-funded festival in Monterrey, Mexico, for 30,000 people. We were the main act on Sunday night in Mexico. Like right now, we're in discussions about shows in London, in parts of Eastern Europe. We've just announced a European tour of a dozen or so countries. We're doing Amsterdam, Paris, France, Lyon, Berlin, Frankfurt, Zurich, Warsaw, Poland. New York is in market now. We've got Calgary coming up, Whistler, Vancouver. So it's it's like they call it a J curve in business terms, where something kind of builds for quite a long time and then there's a tipping point and it starts to take off. And we're hoping we're on that J curve and that it's about to blow up globally.
I'm sure it will. What about, though, when you go take it overseas? What are the challenges? We're talking legal, cultural, technical challenges that you face.
Well, the trickiest one is tax law. Every country is a different tax jurisdiction and we're totally blind on it. And, you can pay big accounting firms for a paper on every country. It costs a fortune or figure it out. Are we a licensing deal, in which case a withholding tax is X amount? Or are we a touring performer, in which case the withholding tax is a lot more? So it's just about structuring our offer and what our contract is, and then being aware of those tax obligations and managing them. And we're learning as we go. It's very much trial and error. By and large, we've landed on a model where, besides New Zealand and Australia, it makes sense to use local talent. And it takes a bit more work. And, it's tempting to try and bring all of the team from New Zealand and Australia. But once you add up all the airfares and accommodation, it kind of it's killed a few deals. So, and with a bit of work, we're actually finding talent in New York and London, really good talent. I mean, imagine all the performers in New York with Broadway shows there. And it's a matter of using our networks to find out who's good and available and then interviewing them on Zoom and sussing out, then send them a brief and a track to rehearse. And then, putting that hard work in, we'll end up with a pool of talent in North America, a pool of talent in Europe, a pool of talent in the Asia Pacific. And that way, the goal is to be a global brand, but local, using local talent.
And this approach has helped cushion them in America, where Donald Trump famously prefers American businesses and workers.
The United States will implement reciprocal tariffs on other nations.
And of course, New Zealand is bracing itself for the impact of the new 10% tariffs, but there's also confusion.
How is that impacting you and particularly doing stuff in the States? Is it having any impact?
Well, it hasn't yet, and the events we have scheduled in the States now are not our events. They're being run by American promoters in the United States who are, in effect, licensing our intellectual property. And so I think we're protected in that respect. If it was us running our own event, we might be subject to the new tariff regime, but at the moment there's been no alarm bells for us.
Right now, David is focused on another new show closer to home. In fact, it's in Auckland next month.
We've actually just created a hard rock and heavy metal version of Synthony, a whole new brand, which we've called Full Metal Orchestra.
The first show at Spark Arena is already nearly sold out. I asked David what audiences can expect this time round.
A collision of civilizations, again a clash of civilizations, raw power and energy of hard rock and heavy metal with a really good live rock band, the best session musicians in New Zealand from the Come Together brand, merged or clashed with conservative classical orchestra, the Auckland Philharmonia with Sarah Grace Williams conducting, and then with a visual show of screens and lasers and LED. And so it'll be explosive. We've got names like Phil Rudd, who's drummed for AC/DC for nearly 50 years, and he's performing for us. That's a coup. We've got John Toogood, who's a Kiwi rock legend, probably the best frontman in the country. We've got Jimmy Barnes' daughter, EJ Barnes, performing. We have Jenny Scalander from Devilskin. And the set list will be well-known bangers from... We've got some Nirvana Nirvana in there, we've got Tool, we've got Soundgarden, Metallica, AC/DC, and just like a rock version of Synthony. And I think it'll take off, and certainly ticket sales are cranking along. And, we'd like to tour Australia. Phil Rudd is rock royalty in Australia, so I think we'll make a quick impact and then look to schedule more shows later this year and next year. And also we're going to video the shows and put them on YouTube at the Full Metal Orchestra YouTube channel. So very similar strategy to what we've done with Synthony.
And so talk me through this. Forgive my ignorance on this. You seem to have these little different pockets of it. The big one is the Domain here and then different ones. Do you use just local talent for the smaller shows, or is it just international talent for the big shows? How do you work out who goes where?
Right, yeah. So the Auckland Domain is what is our festival, and so that culminates in our Synthony performance, but it also has other acts on it like a festival. And so for that event, we are bringing big name international talent in, like Rudimental. We had Basement Jaxx in the year just gone. But for most of the other Synthony shows around the world, it's really just a Synthony show with maybe one or two support acts, and we're trying to use local talent as much as possible. So we generally use the local orchestra in whatever city we're in. The only event where we didn't was the Saudi Arabian authorities hired us to perform at the launch of Sandala, which is a new private island in the Red Sea. And we flew in the Armenian National Orchestra for that performance. But, that takes a bit of budget, and not everyone's able to do that. But that's the only occasion where we haven't used the local orchestra.
Fantastic. Now, dream guest, dream collaboration, what are you thinking?
Goodness. I mean, doing the Super Bowl half-time would be up there, wouldn't it?
Who would you like to be showcasing on that one?
Synthony.
Yeah.
and they can queue up to perform with Synthony. That's how yeah.
I love it. What about things like copyright to get the actual, music selection and stuff? Do you have any issues there?
So we're a covers, really, and we'd like to think we're the biggest and best covers act in the world. And so everything you hear is a cover or like a remake, if you like, of the original sounds. And when we put stuff on, say, YouTube, YouTube pay the publishing right holder their share, and often the publishing right holder is the person who created the track, whether it's Fatboy Slim or whatever. But sometimes it's been bought by a private equity company, and it would be them. So by and large, the publishers get paid, and then when we do live performances, we pay a percentage of our entire ticket gate on an open book basis to APRA, the Association of Professional Recording Artists. It's a six-figure amount of money for the Domain. They divide that up and pro rata pay it to the various creators of the original music. And each country in the world has their own collection society, which we work with on a case-by-case basis.
How long? Because you want to stay, maintain its core to Synthony, but to keep it evolving and stuff, how tough is that and juggling that?
Yeah, well, there's no shortage of good music out there and genres. We were, I'm a rock music fan, and from day one I'd wanted us to do a rock version, and it's taken a few years. But the way that the market's responded to Full Metal Orchestra is very encouraging. I mean, imagine how many fans there are out there of Metallica and AC/DC and groups like that are
a little
probably,
bogan girl in me quite likes it, David.
And those acts are probably finishing up soon, and so there's a huge market of people who love that music, who aren't just getting opportunities to see it often, and so you merge that with an orchestra in an innovative way, and the response at Spark Arena has shown. And so our goal with Full Metal Orchestra is similar trajectory to Synthony. We're going to tour it down New Zealand, and then we're going to take it to Australia and tour it in Australia and build it from there.
When you first watched it in its entirety and you're sitting there in the audience, what was that moment like for you?
Well, the first time I went was when I made the agreement to buy it, their second year of shows were just happening. Year one they did Auckland Town Hall. Year 2, they sold out 2 shows at Auckland Town Hall. I went as part of my due diligence. And at the time, I wouldn't have considered myself a big electronic dance music fan. But once I was in there, it was infectious. Like, even I was standing and moving, and I brought a mate of mine who bought and sold a few companies that definitely wasn't an electronic dance music fan. He was standing and moving. He recognised tracks like Eurythmics, Sweet Dreams. But you could just see that it appealed to all age groups. There were men and women, real happy vibe. Everyone was just on cloud 9, and most of the tracks you would have heard at a cafe or the gym or whatever, even if you weren't an EDM fan. So it was kind of universal in its appeal, and so that's when I realised we were onto some magic. I thought this thing's magic, and it could work anywhere in the world, and it transcends language barriers, and we could grow it into a big festival. And so we set about doing that, and it's gratifying, and it's not just me, of course. So it's a massive team effort that is behind Synthony.
The founders, is there a moment, do you think, where they have absolute regret in what you've been able to turn it into, where they just think, oh man, we've missed a trick here?
I've been asked that, and David has been, he's quite humble and analytical, and he's openly said to me, we would have never done what you were going to do. So I don't sense any of that sort of jealousy or bitterness. If anything, I think there's satisfaction, and they've wished us well. I mean, I thought we treated them well with the commercial deal. We've then kept in touch and look after them at each event and listened to their views and opinions and feedback. And, we've only ever felt goodwill from them. So, and that's good too.
Cheeky question, is it making you rich?
Well, so if you think of my business as like a pie with slices of the pie, Synthony is a piece of the pie, the music. Obviously, we've done a lot of boxing stuff. We've got Joseph Parker, who's number 1 in the world right now, and he'll fight for the heavyweight world title. He's been fighting in Saudi Arabia, and those are lucrative events. And then we've done massive sports events like the NRL Auckland Nines. We've done numerous public speaker events, Richard Branson, Bill Clinton, Al Gore, most recently, Boris Johnson. So I wouldn't say any one of them is making me rich, but I'm after 20 years and this is a risky, but event promotion is risky. It's a hustle. You have to have good judgment. If you get it wrong, you can lose a lot of money. In some ways, it's like property development. You're kind of creating a vision and taking the financial risk and then hoping you get it right most of the time. And so, no, we're doing well now, and so I'm grateful with where we're at.
I know you shouldn't ask this question because it's like picking your favourite child, but out of all the things that you do, is Synthony your number 1, you think, or?
Look, Joseph Parker winning the heavyweight world title, that had never been done. I mean, it's harder than trying to win the Melbourne Cup. I think a few New Zealand horses have won the Melbourne Cup, but I prefer boxing because you can talk to the boxer, you can't talk to the horse.
Fair point.
But no, so I wouldn't say. But Synthony it's got an enterprise value. Like, it's creating a global business that will outlast me. Whereas boxing is more of a transactional affair, one fight to the next. So I'd hate to pick one over the other. A lot of the things have been considered nearly impossible at the outset. And so I think it's like being a sculptor. When you have a vision in your mind and at some times it looks impossible, but then it's like break it down into 10 steps. How would you do it? And then just take step 1 and then take step 2. And then by about step 5, all the doubters are going, oh, look, this actually might just happen. By about step 8, they're all on board. I knew that was going to work. So, so we've had a few that have been like that, where we've taken great satisfaction out of pulling off the seemingly impossible. But Synthony is definitely on track to be a loved global brand, which is born out of Auckland, just like Cirque du Soleil was born in Montreal, Canada around 1980 or 81, and now it's a global brand. I think Synthony will be the same.
Synthony is in the main! You were there!
That's all for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. Thank you to David Higgins. This episode was produced by Gwen McClure and engineered by Phil Benj. I'm Amanda Gillies. Mā te wā.